Hello everyone. Today's talk is called Play with Your Planes of Reality. And what that really means is that everyone is looking at a world, and you're looking at a kind of world which you are seeing. You know, like, this is the world you're seeing. I know this. For example, you're like, okay, that's a trash can. You know, okay, now this is a tree. Oh, okay, this is my world, right? A simple recognition of your observance of reality. Now you see that when man considers a plane, his mind is creative. What that means is that outside of how man is acknowledging himself, the intelligence that is keeping him present, or in a sense keeping the projector on of his holographic reality, is actually in essence an understanding that he is never, in a sense, behind the veil. You will kind of see that the nature of mind is unknown, and that is how it grows. So your mind is an explorer of itself. It is constantly playing and looking at reality. Now, as your nature is observing things, you see that the planes, to be able to consider this plane of reality, what that means is that when we look at our world, when we look at this park that we're walking in, we see that everything is still, and so that we are the moving value in this reality. That means it is man's self-awareness that is giving him shape to even consider things shaped. So through this understanding, you kind of see that there is a hollowness to your view, but also a profoundness to the unknown quality that has just entered your life. You begin seeing that, oh, you don't know everything, so why create arrogance? Why not authentically observe reality? And when you do, you see that how reality shifts is how your understanding of yourself shifts, which gives an understanding of other. So what that means is that these dualities, these distances of space and time conception that one is present in, these shift as your view of everything that you know shifts, because you're observing it again. And so the man who read the book another time totally got a better understanding. You see, even in Islam, we have this concept of Ramadan, and I think during Ramadan, they're meant to read the Quran, the holy book. Now, the reason they're meant to read it is to kind of see that every year they're meant to read it, and to do this is to constantly see and learn from it. What that means is that regardless of the book you read, let's say I read a book right now, and let's say in 2 years I come back to the same place and read that same book. I've had 2 years of experience, 2 years of engaging to different ideas, imagery. I'm built into a different person. Now reading that book will totally give me new associations, new understandings. And so this is what you see when you really observe the beautiful poetry of, sacred hymns, and of the, in a sense, very natural words written by joyous beings in the past. You will see sacred poetry, divine poetry, being one that is very inspired by life. So it is diving into reality by saying that I am here, but not really. And so you're thrown into this tease of wanting to discover your eternity, but you're trapped in a temporal world. And so this is where the mystic begins to see that without love, there is no position to even be positioned in. So what that means is that you need to begin understanding yourself, and every idea of love you have, if it's fluffy for you, that means if you think love is a heart-shaped, red balloon, you are missing the fact that love is actually confronting all of existence with an embrace. And that means parts of your embrace existence that are not, in a sense, loving, and that balloons, in other words, would be torn apart in that memory. If you see that man goes through suffering, because that is how the energy is fluctuating in this plane of reality. So to understand the plane, begin by understanding the nature of the dot, then the nature of the lines. And so what that means is that I want to, in a sense, practically, let you guys journey with Mr. Within into the abstract. And what that really means is that begin thinking of reality as an immediate confrontation. So you're looking at your room or wherever you are. I'm in a park, so I'm looking at the grass, for example. That is immediate reality. I confront it, it is there, this is where I am present, and this is what is real for me, this is what is true. Now, as I constantly observe this, I see that when I observe it, it's as if different aspects of my memory and different colors and shapes begin coming into creating my experience. So suddenly, what I just looked at and I thought it was true, suddenly I'm looking more deeply, and there's a hollowness, because it's like the experience is changing. And so because man has the ability of concentration, he finds himself creating worlds that are more intense than the world he's actually in. And so this is simply human consciousness. It is your awareness of your instrument that really shows how beautiful the melody is. So you need to be able to, in a sense, activate capability by knowing you're able through a more fluid sense of collective consciousness. And this collective consciousness is not in terminology. So do not seek a symbol when there is none. You are here to confront your immediate self. That means the honest man knew that he did not want to continue in a world of lies. And so simply by being honest to yourself, by simply saying, whoa, I've made a lot of decisions, but was there a need? Was there a reason? And so you see that if there is a reason, if you're always trying to think of a reason, that is giving you the psychology of acknowledging that that reality is your reality. So what that means is that a lot of people, they are not really, they're being thrown. In other words, some people get their foot, in quicksand, but they're not stuck in it, but suddenly they just remain in there or even put more weight on that. What I mean by that is that your emphasis on what reality has to be is a bit not unnatural, but unnecessary when your harmonious flow, when your natural essence as a being within this existence is one of allowance. So the most beautiful moments of life were allowed to be perceived by all. So omniscience is a very huge thing, especially for a developing civilization as man. Man must create hope by seeing that he does not need to create a spectrum so big that it's not real for him. What that means is that sensitivity of man has changed. Back in the day, for example, religion was very serious because that is what was real to them. Those imagery, those values, those stories, that wasn't the culture, that wasn't the movement of where humans' mind was looking at and trying to organize itself. Now we've had sciences, and so we've moved past one story and we've been able to create many stories. And for example, some stories are much more accurate in explaining what we're seeing, others are not. However, there's still greater dimensions. There's a depth to your sight that is beyond form. So you see that what is an understanding beyond form? That means something I can't question, something I can't ask. So what can I do if this question is beyond form? You see that the answer is also beyond form. So you need to see that if you want to be where the answer is, you need to observe where you are. And so are you formless or are you formed? And so if you're dependent on information, well then do not tell the clay master to stop. Because you can, do a lot of things in this reality, but the greatest one is to become a very, I say advanced now, but in a sense very natural and intuitive and very present presence in this plane of reality. The minute you do this, you don't understand, you become an allowance, an existential point of view. So beings who are also looking to understand greater allowance become present there. So you see that the light of man brightens the worlds of many beings. And so the light that brightens the world of man is actually what I playfully call the central sun. Remembering its spark, you will see that your expression as a person is no longer bothered by personalities. So you no longer have to be somebody, but you always can be somebody to someone. What that means is you become a comfortable observer of how thought is creating reality. And so as you observe thought, you are present within an existential space of knowing. This knowing is even found within an instant, even beyond conception of space and time. So sometimes I want to say in the mystic's eye. So what that means is that if you were to sit down, be very calm, gentle, and perhaps maybe take certain meditative procedure which resonates with you, and in a sense go into your internal experience, go within, find Mr. Within, you will see that what will really happen is that you will begin re-understanding how you've been understanding things. And so as this develops and continues, the peak of you re-understanding yourself is to not being caught in a realm of cause and effect. So in other words, there's no longer a bridge that never ends, which you're walking on. You simply see that completion means that there's no longer a need for the concept of completion. And this really not wakes you up, but just places you in a reality where you see this reality is your playground. So you need to play with your planes of existence, because a lot of your planes of existence are associations based on other forms which are temporal, and you are externally refabricating them. So what that means is that have trust in yourself, because when you drive a motorcycle, you need to be sure how firm you're holding the grip and how much control you have. So what that means is that your presence is your immediate reality. And so how do you feel about it? How do you feel about the silent moments of your life where you're observing noise? And how do you feel about the noisy moments of your life where you're observing the silence? And similar with stillness and movement, because man is, in a sense, always an observance beyond man, because our nature is one of transcendence, one of a clarity that is always, in a sense, shaping things with an unshaped view. It is very important to realize that for the pilot of consciousness, it is imagery that at first is affecting you. So what that means is that you need to really see what an image means for you, because your reality is the images you're seeing. So when you look at what an image is, that means you're actually trying to observe the fabric of reality. So imagine any box that could suddenly open. Well, guess what? Now you're inside one. How could you see what is beyond, or behind the eyes of other people? What is that concept of soul, spirit, In other words, even if you do not acknowledge those concepts, and you don't have symbols for them, what is the peak of man's collective consciousness? In other words, if man was evolving beyond the human being, where would the peak of his ability be? In other words, you will see that there are many patterns that are chaotic to you, because your sense of reference into acknowledging your greater subtler dimensions, let's say, has been related to the human form. So many people recognize that you will see that you might say you're okay with this toy of a reality to be shifted, in a sense, to be in a sense taken to a state of being by your own collective self-knowing. However, at the same time, when the moment comes, you might not let go. So you need to see that it is your choice. So what that means is that when someone suddenly disagrees with the plan of action, let's say, when I'm around, or when I'm around people, and it's simply just a decision where they suddenly just change their mind. Now, when someone changes their mind, which can potentially, change the whole procedure of the night, you see that one approach is like, why are you changing it? Another approach is actually to understand why that person feels that way. So if you begin observing your emotions, you will also value others' emotions. So what that means is that you will see that your intuition does not have to just be just an internal sense of, a sense of, alignment. It can also be other people's behavior. So what that means is that when I walk in a world where it is observing all forms around me as my existential bodies, because it is the intelligence is beyond body, so it is present in that knowing. So what that means is you suddenly see that you value everyone's emotions. You walk into a room, you value the space. You do not acknowledge space outside of, let's say, emotion. I would like to say emotion, actually. Man is confronted with an environment where he is co-creating with other senses of his own externality. Now, in such environments, he really needs to know himself, because if you don't know, then you will simply shift into another aspect of reality where you can recognize yourself to be known. In other words, your individuality is a tool for this plane of reality. In other realities, there are greater tools than individuality. So what that means is that beings are activating their presences in many dimensions to then realize that they can become a pillar of knowing. So their experience becomes the maintenance of experience. And so we see it's a very interesting phenomenon. In other words, there's no full words or shapes, but in the abstracts of your mind, in your inner space, there are moments where you will see space, like literally space, I don't know how to say it. If I was in a room, literally the room being alive. So it is simply an aspect of acknowledging your unknown through an intense realignment of your knowing based on a certain movement into a more chaotic dance, let's say. Existential allowance is key. And so recognize that the door must dissolve for you to not be stuck in the room. Because when the door dissolves, so does any idea of trying to individually escape. So some people say life is an illusion, and they're trying to still, as an illusory concept, try to figure out a way out of that illusion. So you see, if you know yourself to be more than you are now, that is not an illusion. It is, you can create an illusion. So let's say I'm an amazing billiard player suddenly. And I go into the social settings where I'm in a bar or somewhere, let's say, or wherever there's a pool table, and I am, in a sense, visited, let's say, by friends who I'm meeting for the first time. So in other words, when you are challenged into a game where you're good at, and you, in a sense, communicate in a way as if you're not, you limit your reality. And this is important because this dynamic is found in subtler planes of existence where you feel you have to do something because there's another idea of another have to in your subtler plane. So what that means is you must have a faith in the present moment to such a degree that you are not an idea. And so if you have ideas, they are not something that you can talk about anymore. In other words, the sense of silent comfort comes within your being that is not responding to ideas like in a very reactive way, in a very, compulsive way, I want to say. You need to see that man is here to be present. So your main purpose in this plane of existence is to be present. Now, after you're present and you've had greater acknowledgement of self, now is the time where you can play within the realms of your trust. So what that means is if you trust a certain space, you can co-create amazingly and, in a sense, really work with your abstract mind if you trust that room of presence. So what that means is that you, for example, trust your home, the room where you go to sleep at night. You trust that space, and so you're comfortable there, and you do anything. And even in the shower, people are known to become rock stars. So you will see that because you're comfortable with that space of conception, space of knowing. In other words, the key idea is the knowing of that space. You create comfortably in. So in your abstract and subtle planes of thought, if you have that sense of knowing also, you will see you will be invited in co-creative realities, but you're never the reality. Do you know what I mean? The illusion. You're never the form that is changing. You're the observance of infinite change. So the observance is the clarity that is actually your knowing of what you are. So what that means is, sometimes when you ask yourself what is the meaning of life, you know that meaning beyond terminology, beyond language. In other words, the way you at times know things is transcendent in quality. So what that means is that when you know where your home is and someone comes here and proves to you with whatever they have that you don't know where your home is and that's not your home, you will look them in the eye and be like, buddy, that's my home. Do you know? So you will see that knowing is an ability to be present within a vast existential freedom. You will see that you are allowing yourself the greatest next steps of your life because you are simply being present in where you're going. When you're present in the moment, you become wondrous, and so your mind is watered that way. Your mind begins to sprout, and so the light is actually there always. Light is the trust that you are always present in your growth. You're always growing and evolving and transcending, so never think that a stop really means that you've stopped. It is important for you to recognize the quality of your communication and immediately expand your awareness to your surroundings and how you are translating and interpreting your reality. Because man's clarity can build amazing things, and now it's the time. We want pilots of consciousness, people who can navigate as planes of knowing. In other words, they are simply just playful existential presence, but they are maintaining many external simultaneous routes. And it's in a sense not them, but it's a collective intelligence where they're allowing present through their individual sense of being an intermediary. So the vein of existence does not mean it's the whole thing, it's just the vein. And once you really play with your planes of existence, you will begin having trust in your ability to confront the abstract. So an artist, in other words, if you're a creative person in regards to any category, let's say music or painting or writing or speaking or dancing or whatever, you will see that if you are expressing it, if you're someone who suddenly painted like pictures, you have had such a knowing within you internally that this knowing has even wanted to express in your external reality. And so that is why creativity is a very great state of being, because it's a very great state of existential allowance. So the artist that is in a sense letting himself, in other words, not with a brush but with his bare hands, in a sense, very spontaneously moving his hands to see what the natural rhythm of his allowance for his movement shows, he will see that he has drawn a painting that has aspects of himself within it. And so he will see that the mirror of life is very vast when you're all life. And so there's an infinite presence there. There's an infinite knowing there that the light within the mirror is beyond the form that is kept. And to be honest, playfulness is what activates existential allowance and many other activities, in other words, self-remembrance, self-observance. So what that means is that if you were standing in front of an army, let's say, and you were one soldier and you had to fight all of them, you have one choice: to run with anger, hope, or one, you could go with a sense of playfulness and with a sense of knowing that your experience will continue, so let's see what happens. Because that is how you confront death. Because I don't want to go into the experience of death, for example, without elements of unknown. If you think that you just want to be a being that's knowing, you're limited. This universe is so vast, and your sense of presence within it is so collective that you cannot be separated. And what that means is that if someone says, this is the hierarchy, this is as far as reality goes, this is what reality really looks like, they are wrong. Because reality has such unknown vastness that you cannot, in a sense, create a truth without seeing it change. Find Mr.Within and you will remember the beat of your heart of hearts. You will see how you are present within this existence, and so your playfulness with your planes of reality dissolves you into a collective knowing that has always kept you where you must be. And so you see that existential compassion is multidimensional because it is compassionate in all sensible spectrums. So in other words, you suddenly go into these states of being. The pilot of consciousness, in a sense, emanates it because he's allowing it. So he's allowing chaos in order to speak through him. And as they do, he becomes the greater observance with many, many beings, in a sense, or individualities around him realize the ability to be a vein of existence. And in certain states of collective consciousness, you will begin acknowledging yourself not as just the body within that within your memory or within that idea, but as the whole idea. So once you get a holistic experience, ideas can no longer not integrate. Every minute you look at things, they're dissolving into your greater sense of knowing, which is always being found in the present. So as you're observing the present, but you're also maintaining the stability that is required to navigate through this physical life, you will see that your experience is amplifying, and so your knowing is providing a greater ability to not make decisions because you're not someone to make a decision, but to trust that your steps are as simple as the breath of life that is keeping you here. You see that your steps become life's inspiration to walk through your eyes. And so the profound is never far. It is always in the present moment. And you need to cultivate an ability to love your unknown, and not a love with form. In other words, an ability to compassionately look up at the waterfall that is about to pour down on your face. And this waterfall is one of immense ability of confronting many realities because your other senses of being are also viewing things. So what that means is you get an existential responsibility as the observance that is maintaining many individualities that in an instant are observed through any way that your collective knowing chooses to present itself. There are many, many aspects to this because I am speaking about the unspeakable, and when I do, the greatest thing that I can say to you and give to you is a mirror. And so a mirror means go sit down and you absorb the meaning of life. You look at every image in your mind, every experience. You are here to, in a sense, realign yourself with your sense of truth, and your sense of truth is going back to where you thought that you had to know something externally, in a sense. And that moment in your past, there is a moment, I remember these moments, because you are never caught in the language when you have existed in greater dimensions, and you always have. Because many people think that reality is going from a collective thing, suddenly it began and it sparked into an individual realm. But you begin to see that actually it is a collective movement. The expansion is a collective appreciation. So what is moving you is your ability to consider more collectively where your individuality is. And so it is a collective knowing that is expanding the nature of our reality, the universe. However, there's also in the physical sense the individuality that is, in a sense, the hand that is opening up the fingers, for example. It becomes infinite spectrums lead to infinite spectrums. And so there is a beautiful design in life if you choose to see it. And that design will, in a sense, be your inspiration to experience yourself through greater senses of knowing that can be as simple as just a geometric shape. So, for example, at a certain point in my life, a certain life-changing dream happened. And so what was significant was I saw an inverted triangle in the dream, and in observing that shape, which I had no value, so in other words, I did not look at anything, like I did not have any meaning for shapes. They were just shapes that I just had studied in geometry when I was younger. But when I saw this shape, and I noticed how the way I look at this shape is activating something within me, I noticed that man's interest to know gives him the ability to know it. So all those people who thought that the placebo effect was something that was actually a very unexplainable phenomena would then see that actually it is a very explainable phenomenon when you see that man never had to know anything because he was the knowing. And so you really look through that window of the airplane, which in a sense, metaphorically, is your plane of reality. Because that observance means that there is a space of knowing beyond where space and time came into conception. And so that aspect of knowing is really a transcended shift into a state of being where you're collectively being many experiences at the same time. In other words, simultaneous realities will simply be an observant view in how reality and how all worlds are being expressed. Soothe yourself with authenticity and honesty, because you will suddenly see that an honest man has nothing to fear because there's nothing there that can be taken. In other words, an honest man is the explorer who is just so present within this present moment that all curiosity dissolves into a new dimension of experience, a new sense of confronting reality. And so as that amplifies, you begin finding advanced communicators where all those people who thought that life was about just, in a sense, being there, will see it's also about being there in profound ways once you have the knowing of it. So once you know something, there's an existential responsibility which is a natural movement within you to express it. So man's understanding is it's not very illusory, but it is illusory when he's not looking at the whole picture. So of course it will be illusory. So if I go look at the Mona Lisa and I just look at, one part of it, let's say all the other parts are blocked out and I'm just looking at her, eyes or something, it's not very clear. It's not very clear what the whole picture is. And so man really needs to know that you can choose what you see. But regardless, the infinite change that is present within this universe will take you to a greater understanding, because as all trees extend, they give rise to fruits. And so you will see that your virtuous and intuitive self-knowing within the present moment becomes so fruitful that your sense of novelty is always a multidimensional sense of being omnipresent, omniscient, and in a sense, all-knowing through all that you don't know. Mr.Within is a mirror of existence. And so observe yourself beyond the forms that keep you waiting. For existence never stop playing. Much blessings and namaste.